Angel Young was abandoned by her parents at the gates of an orphanage. A compassionate doctor named Johnson adopted her. What he did next will astonish you. When Angel Young was born in a hospital in Manila, her arrival was met with a harsh reaction from her mother, Carmen. As the doctors handed the newborn to Carmen, she looked at her daughter and recoiled in shock. "What is this?" Carmen cried out, her voice tinged with disgust. The medics, noting Carmen's reaction, swiftly explained that Angel was born with anencephaly, a rare and serious neural 2 defect that caused an abnormal growth on her baby's face. They reassured Carmen that with time and potential surgery, there might be ways to manage the condition. Despite their efforts, Carmen seemed overwhelmed and unresponsive to their reassurances. Just then, Carmen's husband, Antonio, burst into the room with a beaming smile, eager to meet their new baby. His joy quickly turned to concern as he took in the scene before him, the pained look on Carmen's face, and the tense atmosphere. Antonio's instinct told him that something was amiss, casting a shadow over the moment he had been looking forward to. "Is something wrong?" Antonio asked, his voice laced with concern as he looked at Carmen, though he wasn't really expecting an answer. Carmen didn't reply. Instead, she gestured toward the crib where the medics had placed the baby. Antonio understood immediately and moved swiftly to the crib. As he leaned over to look at his daughter, his face fell. Overcome with shock and confusion, he turned away abruptly. Without a word, Antonio stormed out of the room, leaving behind a cloud of anger and distress. 3 days later, Antonio returned to the hospital to bring Carmen and their baby home. The couple bundled the newborn in a blanket and placed her carefully in a baby basket. Antonio carried the basket to his small Audi, and after securing the baby inside, he drove off, his thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. From the hospital with his wife and baby, it was already late in the evening. Once they hit the road, Antonio didn't waste any time before bluntly telling Carmen that there was no way they were going to keep that alien-looking baby. Carmen agreed to her husband's suggestion at once. How were they going to explain to all their friends and relatives that they had given birth to such a monster? Carmen thought to herself. The couple then started making plans on how to dispose of the baby as soon as possible. They both agreed to drive around the city for a while until it got darker, then look for an orphanage and dump the baby at the entrance. After dumping the baby, they would then drive home to their hometown, which was about 5 hours from the capital city. As for their relatives back home, who were eagerly awaiting their arrival with the baby, the couple decided to simply lie and tell them that the baby had died during childbirth. That's how they felt anyway. Their baby, the one they had been expecting for so many months, was gone. Antonio and Carmen drove around Manila for about an hour, searching for an orphanage. As night fell, they found one in downtown Manila after a 3-hour search. Antonio assessed the security, noting it was lax, with no guard visible. Satisfied, he parked nearby, and after a few minutes, grabbed the baby basket with their newborn and hurried to the orphanage entrance, leaving the basket there before speeding away. The next morning, Luis, the guard who had fallen asleep during his shift, woke up. A chain smoker, his first task was to buy cigarettes. As he stepped outside, he heard a baby's cries. Approaching the basket, Luis shone his flashlight inside and gasped, "Is this an alien or something?" Throughout his almost 3 decades of service at the orphanage, Luis had picked up hundreds of abandoned babies at the entrance, but he had never seen anything like this before. The baby didn't even look human at all. She looked like something from another planet. Despite his sheer bewilderment, Luis knew he had to do his job, so he picked up the baby basket and walked back into the orphanage. None of the staff on duty agreed to touch her. They all directed him to take the baby to the chief doctor, Dr. Matthew, who happened to be in his office that early morning. Matthew was an American doctor who had settled in the Philippines with his wife, Chloe. He was in charge of the government-owned orphanage. Luis, still carrying the baby basket, gently knocked on the doctor's office door and was told to enter. As Luis explained everything to the doctor, Matthew promptly stood up from his seat and lifted the baby girl from the basket. The security guard expected the doctor to express some form of shock at the baby's abnormal appearance. But Matthew maintained his calm demeanor and just stared at the baby girl. At that very moment, the baby, who had stopped crying once Matthew picked her up, smiled ever so sweetly at him. The innocent baby girl's sweet smile did it for Matthew. Something melted inside his heart. At that moment, he felt an instant connection with the helpless baby girl and vowed to protect her all his life. Matthew thanked the guard and directed him to return to his post. Then he immediately called his chief nurse on the intercom. When she arrived, Matthew instructed her to thoroughly examine the baby for any visible signs of injury. He also directed the nurse to bathe the baby with warm water and feed her formula. The nurse attempted to take the baby girl from Matthew, but she started crying at once, proving that she already felt a sort of connection with the doctor. Matthew cuddled the baby for a while until she stopped crying. Then the nurse took her from him and proceeded to carry out her boss's instructions. In the following weeks, the baby girl was well cared for at the orphanage, and Matthew frequently visited to cuddle and play with her. During one visit, he affectionately called her "my little angel," and from then on, she was named Angel. The name stuck, with both Matthew and the nurses using it regularly. Despite the care she received at the orphanage, Matthew wanted more for Angel, knowing her unusual appearance would likely make her difficult to adopt. He wished to adopt her himself, wanting to give her a loving home with him and his wife, Chloe. At first, Chloe was opposed to adopting Angel, finding it hard to accept a baby who looked so different. After much pleading from Matthew, she reluctantly agreed. With Matthew's influence, the legal adoption process was swift, and within weeks, Angel was officially part of their family. Despite her initial hesitation, Chloe soon grew to love Angel deeply, charmed by her sweet nature. The couple treated Angel as their own, showering her with love and affection, making her an integral part of their family. As Angel grew, she developed a deep bond with her adoptive parents, Matthew and Chloe. Despite their love, Angel's hernia, a 200-gram lump on her forehead and nose, made life extremely challenging. It hindered her ability to sleep, breathe, and play like other children, and she often had to adjust it to see properly. At school, Angel faced relentless bullying and name-calling, which deeply upset her. Matthew and Chloe offered constant support, encouraging her to persevere. Matthew consulted with surgical experts who recommended waiting until Angel was at least 10 for the hernia removal to avoid complications. The surgery was expensive, so Matthew and Chloe saved diligently. When Angel turned 10, they flew her to Australia for the operation. The $50,000 surgery was successful, and Angel's lump was finally removed, bringing immense relief and joy to her adoptive parents. After the lump was removed, Angel's appearance changed drastically, making her nearly unrecognizable. 3 days after surgery, she was discharged and rushed to a mirror at home, staring at her transformed reflection in awe. Overwhelmed with joy, she hugged Matthew and Chloe, shedding tears of happiness for her new look and life. Following the surgery, Angel excelled in life. She achieved top grades in high school, studied medicine to help children with birth defects, and landed a prestigious job with a 6-figure salary. 15 years later, she returned home for Christmas, only to find a strange couple talking with her adoptive parents. You won't believe what Matthew did next. As Angel entered the room, Matthew introduced her biological parents, Antonio and Carmen, telling her she was free to leave with them if she wished. Angel stood frozen, her eyes locked on the couple who bore a striking resemblance to her. The room was filled with tension as both sets of parents watched her closely, waiting for her decision. Torn and emotional, Angel's gaze shifted between the two couples. Tears welled up in her eyes, and after a brief hesitation, she rushed into the arms of Matthew and Chloe, declaring through sobs, "These are my only parents now and forever." Chloe gently led her upstairs, with Matthew following closely behind. Antonio and Carmen were left in a state of stunned silence and deep humiliation. They sat for a while, exchanging glances of disappointment and regret. Eventually, they stood up, their movements heavy with remorse, and walked out of the house through the same door they had entered. As they left, a profound sense of regret enveloped them. Since abandoning Angel, they had lived without a child, haunted by their decision. They had eventually tracked Angel to her adoptive parents' home, hoping she might welcome them back into her life. However, they soon realized they were both wrong, and it was too late to make amends. I'm really keen to know your thoughts on this story, so please don't hesitate to share your insights in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and found it engaging, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for more similar content. Feel free to share this video. Take good care of yourselves, and I'm excited to connect with you in our future videos.